ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Toward Equality of Life in the month of February here at BNN TV. I'm in the studio tonight with Lara Ferrar, a student in the School of Communications at Boston University. She hails from that fine state of Arkansas, and she's here to give me some questions and do an interview of me. Whoopee! And I really like that. So thank you for coming and doing this.
No problem. Thank you so much for inviting me. This
You're
is
welcome.
a great opportunity. The first topic that I wanted to address tonight was being the month of February and Valentine's Day. I wanted to discuss with you the implications of being in a relationship and how that has evolved over time, and how looking at the youth today, particularly 20-somethings in college, how you see males and females interacting and in a relationship, and whether that has changed in society.
Well, that's not something that can be answered too spontaneously. I'd have to really reflect on that, but just in a cursory way, it certainly seems that girls are much more willing to just have a pure sexual liaison with guys. Guys always wanted a pure sexual liaison to a great degree, and girls would be more withholding and, you know, waiting for the right things to happen. You probably even heard about the book that came out a couple of years ago by two females that were saying how to catch a guy, and some of the rules of it were to, like, play hard to get and not make like you're available readily for a date on a Friday night, that you had to go through all this, and people went through more of that kind of thing, and they expected some fidelity and some longevity, and behind not every, but most relations, the female certainly had it in her to want it to amount to something, to want the boy to like her enough that potentially they could get married, even if they didn't get married, wanted it to be serious. And I think that still is certainly there. I mean, girls are crazy about getting diamond rings and having a wedding and getting the clothing and all that, but they're much more liberal about meeting up with a guy and just engaging in sex. That in a gross way, I guess, is what I would say I see as changing over time.
Do you think, what are the social implications of it? Because usually between males and females, promiscuity, sexual relationships, males tend to have the upper hand as far as how they're viewed, and females tend to not be viewed as favorably. Do you think that changed in society?
What do you mean they have the upper hand? In what respect?
In the respect that they can, quote-unquote, sleep with as many females as they want without being viewed negatively for that. Do you think that that's changed today?
Well, yes, it has. Yes, it has. For example, not that it's explicitly the sex per se, but women having children and not having the fathers with them and not getting married to them or else being separated from them is way more prevalent and way less frowned upon. It was such a shame, for example, in the time when I was in high school, were a girl to get pregnant, that she would have to leave the school, hide it. I knew of a person who strapped herself in to not let it show, and it was just a total crisis if someone should become pregnant. So, and you know that women now become pregnant and have kids and are single and never have much of a relationship often with guys, and they're accepted more. The families accept it. They take the kid in. The kid becomes like a member of an extended family to a degree, the child that's born. So, deep down inside, I could be wrong. I really wouldn't know this, but deep down inside, women are on the receiving end of a sexual, some would disagree with me, but they are on, you know, the nature of sex is that, you know, like a saying would go, I'm going to give it to you, you know. So the women are kind of the receptacles, as guys would explain, and men are penetrators. And so the dynamic of sex is, at least heterosexual sex, is women on the receiving end. And I'm not sure that deep down inside women just want to be on the receiving end and not just get anything more for it. I think what women really want, no matter how much sex they engage in, more than anything, is attention. They want attention from the male. If a male tells them they look good or at all pays attention to them, it makes women just feel so good and glow. That's like a thing for them. But for the male really just wants to touch breasts and, you know, touch private parts and so on and be in there. That's what the male is all about. So what I'm saying is, yeah, it's not as bad for women to be, so to speak, promiscuous and have illegitimate pregnancies, so to speak. It still is nowhere near as easy, I think, for a woman as for a man. I don't think there's any equivalency there still, because there's still a ton of people that would condemn a female for having multiple sex partners, or even sex out of marriage for that matter. So, and what do the women really want? I think it's too bad. The first cut is the deepest. And Rod Stewart was the first to sing that, as far as I know. Sheryl Crow has that song right now. And I take that to mean, too, for a woman that when they have sex and the guy's not there initially, you know, when they're feeling all warm and the guy's paying attention and it's all so wonderful, and they're somewhat stimulated and they're somewhat horny, to be frank about it, but really what they are is they're in the arms of a male, and you know, it's just so neat. And then they fornicate, so to speak, and you know, the woman has different things on her mind, and then the phone call doesn't come the next day, or, you know, the male. I really think the first cut is the deepest, and women learn to live with that, and I could be wrong. Something could get lost along the way.
From being in college, a lot of my female friends are very hesitant today to get into a committed relationship because they are afraid of losing their independence, which I think, from what I know, that is definitely a different attitude. So I'm curious as to how you think women are in society today. How are they faring in the job market? Are they achieving more equality? Are they realizing that they're completely equal and don't need men? What's your take on females?
Just yesterday I was with a female for an extended period of time who's in your generation, and I thought to myself, without being plain, without being a school marm, without being a nerd, she was really cute, not sexy, just regular but cool looking. And I could tell and she's going to New York when she graduates, she's in video production, and I could tell that this girl was grounded. I thought to myself afterwards, I said, this girl is not chasing males, that's not in her mind, and yet I don't believe she was gay. She's not it's amazing. That wasn't in her mind, and yet she wasn't like just a professional. She was hip, she was cool, but that was not part of her makeup at this point in time. And I thought, how wonderful. So that's an advancement, and I do see females who don't have on their mind to have a date, to be with boys, you know, are you know, concerned about being independent. I do see that, yes. And but are they getting ahead more? Really, are women actually equal? One good case in point is the detestation and loathing that people have for Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton could be called domineering, and what she really is a person, female or male, who knows what she wants and knows what gut she's not going to take from anybody, and knows what she wants to say no matter what you think about it. And if a male, as Madonna pointed out long ago, if a male were to be that exact same way, which many males are, not a thing would be thought about it. So women are not not equal in that respect. I noticed last night as well when I went to the same place where I was with this girl, and I asked for something at a counter. I noticed that I got attention and I got respect and I got what I needed, but when a male came, it just dawned on me, and I don't usually think like this, how they sort of dropped everything and there was just a difference there, and I usually never think about that. Mostly I don't think about, is the male getting more than the female? I don't think about that too much. But no, there's not equality. Katie Couric has done quite well. Greta is she on Fox? She's done quite well. There's certain ones you can see whose stature is quite equal in a way, with peers or with people of status in the level that they're at. You can see it here and there. But generally, no, women are still really way behind. Yes, as far as just being free to be who they are. They're called bitches. I try to I never use that word. I'll use every other vile word. I'm not against vile words. I think they satisfy a need we have to just say it like we really want to, say it. But bitch is a word to me that's very, very vulgar to use. And many people will talk about women as bitches, including women. And they'll
absolutely.
Yeah. So, and they'll use the C word about them as well. So you can see that the thoughts about women are still that. And why are they bitches? And why are they C's? And why are they hoes? And why
because they're aggressive women generally?
Well, because they have sex and they're receptacles. Why are they still that? Because they're sluts. Why are they called sluts? Because for them to have sex, as you said, on an equal footing, when and where they want it, or to wear a skirt and look good, which is their prerogative because they're humanly made that way, makes people dynamically right away think sluts, whore, bitch, and all that other stuff.
Right.
So there you go. So these are many of the non-equivalencies.
Do you think that culture and mainstream media still has a lot to do, or has a lot to do with women and how they feel they should portray themselves in society? And what needs to be changed to try to let women realize that they can be aggressive, assertive women and change the negative perspective that people have on them of being a bitch, of being someone that you don't want to be a strong, powerful woman. It still is generally viewed negatively, especially by men.
Well, as far as the media goes, as far as women go too, like I believe women's bodies are quite beautiful. Some people would disagree and say they're repulsive. Okay, some people actually can't stand the female body, but I think that it's quite the gorgeous body, no matter what shape it is. And many painters have painted all forms of women. And if you really appreciate the fine things in life, the body of a woman is a fine thing. Period. And I think that a woman has a right to enhance and make herself feel good and aesthetically great as possible, which would inevitably mean that she looks sexy. To look good, you kind of look sexy. It's hard to get away from it. But in terms of sexiness and the media, I see a kind of duality of what kind of sex is really just sort of a straight ahead, grounded, know where you're going kind of sexuality and being used sexuality. And there's an awful lot of sex that in music videos where the female is sort of like, it's still that object, that word that's been used so much, a thing that is merely there for titillation, no pun intended, and really when you watch what kind of dancing or what kind of words or what kind of movements and clothing and just the general gestalt and the emanations, the vibe that you get from it, it's kind of women as playthings for sex, sex toys, versus the classic case of Madonna, who said, and many people would probably disagree with me here now, saying slut, hoe, you know, blah, blah, but saying, you know, I am a sex toy, and here's what it is, and I'm going to show you what it is.
And respect me as that,
that's
too.
Different. Well, I don't even know if she wanted the respect. I'm sure it hurt when so much she's been through, but I think she's just saying, here's what it is. It doesn't matter. This is where it's at. This is it, period. From A to B. This is the direct line from A to B. This is it. You know, a female, and this is how it is, you know. She was nobody's stooge.
Right.
Nobody's thing.
Now, what about the recent incident at the Super Bowl with Janet Jackson and how society and the media has responded to that? Why this reaction? Especially with so much sex out there already.
Well, I don't know. I guess if you are a parent and you have a young child watching that, I guess you could be upset, you know, not wanting that kind of intrusion into a family event. But I think what a lot of critics have said is that the show in the halftime was way more, that the show in the halftime was way more vulgar than the event of the breast coming undone. And I didn't see it because I'm not really a fan of football, and I don't think I'm not a fan of Justin Timberlake. Is that his name? Yeah, I mean, not particularly a fan of his, or Janet's for that matter, even though she does dance great and she did make some worthwhile songs. So I think the fact that people don't like the intrusion and that there's a lot of people out there wishing the doors to pornography were closed, wishing the internet were policed, wishing that MTV did not have the kind of videos that it had. They're getting an inch, just like with the current president we have, because he's getting an inch on a lot of things that were not being done up till the time he became president. He's inching his way further in towards the so-called value system that his people have. Well, there's a lot of people out there with the quote-unquote value system that this and anything else like it is something we should censor, deny, to be shown. So they're able in the climate to come out more strongly and say, this has got to go. I mean, only 200,000 complaints to the FCC if that's all they got. Considering that millions of people watched it, they thought it was said that was a lot of complaints, and I'm sure it is by usual standards, but that's really not a lot of complaints. A lot of people probably like, oh my God, what else? And they just, they don't really like it, but it's like abortion. They're not ready to go carry a banner and say, don't you dare do it, I guess. But they're more quiet, and the more vocal ones are coming out. So, and the media always needs something to play with. And someone had an interesting take on it, that ripping the clothes off the breast of a woman is a violent act and not a dramatic act. So I don't think that's how it's meant in that dance sequence. I think it's meant people getting very sexual and rough and ready, kind of like, hot for each other, just like ripping clothes off each other, I think is more how they meant to convey it, which is not exactly violence. But, so, I thought it was kind of I didn't like the way the breast looked with that. What was it, a spider on it? I didn't care for it.
It was a star, I believe.
Star,
yes.
yeah, I didn't care for the looks of it.
I didn't see it at all.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. So, but, all the boys and all the girls suck at the mother's teat. Okay, I mean, if they're not on formula. Okay, so the breast is sacred, it's life-giving, it's the source of nourishment to the baby, and it's very interesting that when you're a baby you suck, no pun intended, and you suck your thumb, you suck your toys, you suck everything, and you suck your mother's breast. And it's very interesting too in relation to the breast that we have the expression, you suck. Now, so we don't think very much of a lot of these things. Go ahead, yeah.
You mentioned that President Bush trying to extend his value system.
If that's what you call it.
Now,
I use that word loosely.
I have the feeling like, and I think that I've read articles about this, that people have commented that kind of the whole country is on this big conservative upswing. And I even have heard that there's a big movement on college campuses for evangelicalism. Now, I'm wondering, since, say, the 1950s to the present, is this just a cycle that the country and society goes through, or is this some new thing? Why are we moving in this direction?
Couple of things. It's always very complicated, multivariable, and levels and layers at which it's all coming in. But you're right, on the one hand, things go more liberal, things go more authoritarian. They do. We had Hitler. We had very sort of self-righteous society that started to bust loose after World War II, and all kinds of mores, even actually since the 20s, things were compared to Victorianism. There's layers, cycles upon cycles. Things started getting loose, and they're culminating in the 60s and kind of falling off in the 70s and in the trash can in the 80s, and now starting in the 90s, a growing movement, even as the Clinton years brought a lot of liberalism to the fore. Underneath that and simultaneous with it, the growing authoritarianism and the hatred of him, too, because he represented that to a great degree. The growing authoritarianism, strictnism that we should punish people. There's two ways of thinking. Really, there's two broad ways that humans relate to the world. One is live and let live. I don't really know what you should do about abortion. There's this, but there's that, and you toss a lot of things around, hold them in your head at once. I'm not really willing to say somebody's like horrible because they don't have my religion, etc. Send the kid upstairs without his dinner. Though don't do that, you say to your husband. Don't, let him be, he's had enough. Versus, you're going to bed without any food. There's consequences, young man. You will not take, making sure you punish everything, and sometimes very severely. And care about what your neighbors are doing, care about what religions people have, if they have religion, that they have white gloves on and that they read a Bible, etc. And that life is more harsh, that this is not just easy street. So that people really have those two different kinds of views. Some people, when murder is committed, say, kill him, electrocute him, and some people say, I'd like to see him come back to life so I could redo it. Other people who have even had victims in hijackings and so on say, the quality of mercy is not cheap, and I know my daughter, whomever, would not want it to be this way. So, actually the Christian way is the liberal way, which says, judge ye not, and which says forgive them because they know not what they do. The true Christian way is a highly, highly liberal way. But anyway, these things do go in cycles, and we're in a decided authoritarian cycle, and it's also one where we're getting our rights to speak and be like we want to be taken away, and also these judgments on what should be on television, including, anti-sexuality and so forth. So, so it does go in cycles. On the other hand, the evangelism is very interesting, because with the advent of science, since the late 1800s, say, and even before, creeping, crawling, becoming more prominent, bringing in technology, etc., physicists in particular brought in, slowly but surely, biologists too, the idea that God is dead. Nietzsche said God is dead. That we will find out everything there is to know about the universe. There is nothing that science can't know. And in fact, it can be shown that the drive for science, especially experimental science, is a drive to control life in many respects, to be God in a way. And so in the times when I was getting schooled, it was very strong pressure implicit in that you don't need much more than science. Science is the be-all and end-all, and true knowledge, true reason, true everything comes through science. Now we come to a world where papers are blowing in the wind, strangers are passing each other in droves on the street, eye contact's not being made, children are murdered and on milk bottles and on IRS forms, and strangers whose faces we won't recollect, and yet they're all around us. Subways are unsafe, etc. Let me not go on about that. And people are scared. Because deep down inside, they have to know, what the hell am I doing here? What's the meaning of life, no matter how much they avoid that question? And they're thinking about God. Where did God come into things? They need something to hold on to. They need something to feel safer about. Something like a stick in the mud during a storm that they can fasten themselves to. So there's kind of a magnetism between religion and people coming together right now, too, in an information age where we're supposed to be so computer literate, so hip, so cool, so cyber, that we can run messages around the world at quicker than the speed of light, and yet people are really basically probably shaking in their pants deep down inside at night, nightmares and night sweats and so forth.
Could society exist without religion? Did the two go... Obviously it could, but do the two go hand in hand? How do humans interpret and deal with the possibility of death in their lives? Because it's going to happen to all of us. And are there different modes of coping with it? And obviously I feel like religion's one of those intrinsic ways of trying to deal with the fact that there's an end, that we'll have to be alone in the end. What are the different ways that humans try to deal with the thought of death in their life?
Denial. In this country, anyway, which I'm most familiar with, denial. Face creams, fountains of youth, freezing your bodies, taking experimental treatments with and subjecting yourself to kinds of technology to extend your life when really your time is due. Denial, I think, if you want to be very gross about it, is the way we deal with it. And yet, you're right, we do have to, no matter how much we deny it, it happens. And when it happens, we can't deny it for the most part. And so it's still there. Even while we're running from it, we're also having to deal with it. You know, underneath that, those things are going on simultaneously. But I think much of our waking hour is spent in pursuit and in occupations, be they leisure or otherwise, that are avoiding, you know, death and the meaning of life generally. You know, and that's not good. That's not good. You know, there should be more of a balance. Should be more of a balance, and we should be able to take time to grieve. That's really bad. That's really destroying the society, too. That people pick up very soon after a death event and just move on, trying to make, you know, carrying on the same way as before. Whereas in classic Italy, for example, women whose spouses passed would mourn for a year at least. You know, and I'm sure in other cultures, even in this culture, you know, certainly in times past in this culture, you got much more time to grieve. You do need that time. Somebody I know who had a bad event, someone died, was telling me how people around him were saying, "Come on, man," because he was just depressed and in a corner and couldn't get it together. And they were saying, "Come on, come on." And he was saying, and he wasn't sure, were they right or was he right? And I was saying, you were right. And he was happy to hear that, because it felt to him like people were saying, get yourself together, and it just wasn't fitting. He just couldn't do it, you know. So we try to do that with a lot of things, you know, put on a happy face, have a nice day, you know. So But death is even what science, as I was alluding to before, mortality. Mortality is a big thrust of the scientific endeavor, including the point-blank endeavors that are trying to extend life, keep life beyond, even immortality in theory, clone life, know every cellular facet, which is impossible to do, et cetera, to be in control of that great uncertainty, the big black hole, that darkness, that if you're alone at night and feeling lonely and in despair is very great indeed. That's what we all have to cope with deep down inside.
What about birth and death and the whole notion of life on Earth, and there being some kind of purpose or some kind of creator, some kind of cause behind it? What is your take on that? What's your opinion?
Oh, geez, birth and death, cause. Well, anything I'm thinking is just tentative. I don't believe anything I'm thinking. So, but in a way, I believe that life is a fatalistic event, that we are on the stage playing our parts that are scripted for us. And when we enact them and go through them, they are a struggle and they are fresh to us and they are things we have to cope with, new and with great difficulty or joy or whatever it is, as though we were experiencing it for the first time. And yet we may just be cogs playing out a role that's there for us to play out. I could imagine that. I don't know anything about God, if there is a God, if there is a prime mover. I don't know a thing about that. Nothing I've ever heard is something that I would hold on to as my idea. The best I'm able to believe is to not believe at all, is to just not know. I guess in a way, I kind of have a blind faith to a degree that I get up and I continue to live and try to do things. I have a blind faith that there's a reason to do it. Don't ask me what it is. So I must have some sort of faith, because when you don't have a faith, I think you don't move a step further. And certainly, for sure, this I know, and I don't mean to be mystical about it. Life is a mystery. To quote Madonna, life is a mystery. Life is a mystery. That I'm sure of. Life is a mystery. Nobody is ever, that I know of, ever figured it out. Nobody I know of. I don't think, I could be wrong. Again, I don't really believe what I'm saying, but I don't think it's humanly possible to figure it out. And I spent a good deal of time in parts of my life thinking of that and other deep issues that I just, moved aside from, kind of as not futile, but like not the way to be thinking. So life is a mystery, and you don't know why you're here. And the biggest mystery is that I don't give a damn about science. I don't give a damn about technology. And when somebody like Comcast or Intel tells me they've got something that'll revolutionize the world and the likes of which human life will be so fantastic, it's sickening in a way, because those things are absolutely nothing. And the things that we think are great often are pitiful, and we're not that smart. We're really, the smartest among us is not smart. We're all really dense creatures. But what's really amazing, science and all that stuff notwithstanding, is not that in the body you can find cellular structure and RNA and DNA and then the structure inside of that. Not that. But just that there is flesh, just that there is color, just that this cloth stretches, just that there's a ground and the texture and air, just that it is. Like, why is a curtain a curtain? Mm-hmm. That's a miracle to me as a human, and to any human I know of, could never answer that question. The essence and substance that there is a world at all is just totally amazing. And then as a human, if you think of that you can talk to me and I can talk to you, and it can make us think, and it can be a reality in and of itself, and it's not tangible. And I don't care about the brain cells, and I don't care about the chemistry. But the fact that there's a reality of communication and thoughts that is metaphysical. It is not physical. If you cut the brain open, you're not going to pull out the thoughts.
Right.
Is amazing. That's a mystery. It's beyond human knowledge. It's beyond human capacity to know, in my opinion. That's what I think about all of that.
In your current thinking on life, you mentioned that you felt that things are fatalistic, and that perhaps when we get up every day, we're just playing out some part that's been planned for us. What about existentialism, and how can that play into all of this?
Well, still, at the same time, especially if you're not so depressed, and if you do have a sort of kind of implicit faith, you don't know that it's fatalistic. You know, I'm saying it's quite possible that it's predetermined, so to speak. But you as the actor, like if you're all forlorn and you don't know what to do because you're facing a dilemma and you're pacing and you're wondering and your mind's tossing things around, you're really living through that. It doesn't matter if it's predetermined or not. You're living through it. And you have to go through the ordeal of getting yourself through the situation. And you're really going to experience it. And if you're struggling, which we all are in some way, and if you're struggling with your inner self and your conflicts and your problems in life, you really are, and you really have to. And it really hurts, and it really takes energy, and it really takes perseverance, and it really does take courage. And you've got to come up with that courage. Doesn't matter that it's predetermined.
Right.
Because you can't, it could be, if you just sit there, okay, that's predetermined too. I'm just saying that you as the actor, whatever it is, it could be predetermined, even if you just sit there and do nothing, but in life you are living for real. It's sort of like a paradox.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of conflicts in life, everyone wants to, and the majority of people want to attain a level of contentment and happiness. Is that attainable in life? Is happiness a real thing that an individual can have?
Well, if you go according to Buddha and certain other Eastern philosophies, you can gain a kind of happiness or joy and contentment, a state of nirvana, a state of contentment, a state of, as Buddha would describe, I guess, no desire. Not wanting things and therefore being at peace. And in further discipline along that line, a state of joy. You know, it's meditation and kind of a true Christian thing of giving up the guile, giving up the hatred, giving up the attachments, giving up the need, giving up the materialism. You can reach a state of bliss and joy. So some people would say so. I guess some people would say they've been happy, like, was it Duke Ellington or, no, it wasn't Duke, it wasn't Louis Armstrong, it was, Dizzy Gillespie, I believe, Dizzy Gillespie. He said once in an interview, sort of close to the time he died, and he died fairly young in his 70s, he said that he's a happy person. I don't know if he used the word happy exactly, but he sure looked happy, and he said he's had the greatest life because he's been able to do what he really loves. And he's been able to do it, you know, to live, to do everything. And you could see it was a truly wonderful thing for him, and he felt great about it. So that was a kind of happiness. It's rare that people can say, you know, I've lived a life that brings me great joy, and you know what I do all the time is something that makes me happy. You know, that's not all that common. So, and I personally, I don't think many people are like this. I'm not sure, but personally, I don't go for happiness myself. I don't go for sadness either. I don't want to be sad, but it's just not one of the things that I think of as something I'd like to achieve, or even that's achievable. If I have sort of an even keel, and I feel fairly good, and if I can ride through things that I might ordinarily catastrophize or get stressed about, if I can handle them well and maintain, and then deal with fear, because we all have fears. In life, anything can happen to you. And there are things to be fearful about all over the place, and if you can deal with fear, and but no matter how much you have things sort of under control, anybody can reach the situation where things are totally out of their control, and like Martha Stewart right now. Anything can happen to anybody, and you could be at the wrong end of something at a moment's notice. But, happiness is just not something that I think about, just more like fun, maybe. I could fun is not quite happiness. I could like fun and enjoyment would be nice. Yeah, that would be fun.
Now, on the flip side, today in society there is an extreme diagnosis of antidepressants. Are we all really that depressed, and do we all need a pill to fix it, or is there some other answer?
Well, I'm not favorable personally to a lot of medication. There are people who are seriously ill who favor to get psychotropic medication to ward off the symptoms they have. But there are many, many who would never be on as many drugs given their druthers about it, if it weren't so persuaded to them or even forced on them to a degree. And then the rest who aren't really all that ill, they're ill, they're depressed, whatever, maybe not extremely seriously, they're learning, again, another form of denial, back to some of the other things we had talked about before, to ward things off, cover it over, keep moving ahead, act like it's not there. Maybe many people are carrying grief that they haven't been able to absolve or resolve over time. If people have deaths, they have to, that alone can give you a depression as you go into life. Or you can have grief over losing a job, or being placed out of a dwelling, or losing attachments. How about children in daycares that are getting new situations all the time, and they form attachments so easily, and then those things are split asunder? Imagine what kind of bad feelings they have to accumulate and cope with, and how that can continue and translate into the growing years. So the fast pace we're living, and the way so much, the context in which we're living, that doesn't satisfy the interrelational needs that we have to be human. As humans, we really want to relate. We really want to, rub elbows, and we love if people know us, know our name. We can say to them small, sort of uneventful events that make up what daily life is all about, most of all. Not the big ones like we're getting married, but the little ones, like I just got a parking ticket, or I just saw Bob, the guy we used to work with, or you wouldn't believe what my professor said in class today. And you have somebody to really, that's what you need as a human. So I think as that gets skimpier and skimpier, the depression gets greater and greater. We're definitely lacking that.
So you think humans are relating less in today's society?
Yeah, there's just not that much of a...
Why?
Well, because
changed?
Because, like, say you and I, we'll relate for this, but we probably won't relate otherwise. And then there'll be other people you'll be doing this with, and so will I, other things, and we'll come and go. Like Alvin Toffler's book, Future Shock, kind of like billiard balls on the table. schedules. You go from one thing to the next. You meet someone in a class, you know them in that context. Know is a funny word here, but, little things are exchanged, and then that's it. You may be on to another class, another school, another city, whatever. And so the time that we're with the same people over extended experiences is much narrower, much more narrow. Before, people used to be around each other for much longer periods and over days and months and years. Like when I was in college, we used to know everybody in our building, not just in passing at the mailbox, but we actually had our doors open and we could walk into each other's apartments, sit down any time of day. Nobody was like too busy or on a computer. And, chill, rap, a lot of music. At night, sit out on a stoop. People played right here on Boylston Street in Boston. People played music in, was it not quite at Copley Square, but like a block down from Copley, going up towards Mass Ave. People would actually sit on the sidewalk and hang at night, if you could imagine, in good weather. Just, strumming guitars and talking and things like that, Now look at Boylston. You can't hang on, there's no place you would hang on Boylston. You keep moving on Boylston. Boylston's just a street to go down to get somewhere.
So with the lack of personableness, or the lack of relating between humans now, however scant that it is, how do you see society 10, 20 years from now in the state of humanity, especially in the developed countries such as America?
Well, we'll probably be more paranoid. I don't know. I don't want to paint a bleak picture because you also become a different human. Life just becomes different. There is an adaptation. There is an adaptation as well. You become, more cut off from those needs. You might take more pills. You might be on the computer all the time to, give you something to do, to occupy your time. So there are some adaptations as well. There are some accommodations. But I think we're obviously going to know each other less than we do now. I mean, if things keep on going, they're not going to change. They're going to get speedier and, than they are now. So we're going to know each other even less.
Okay, on a completely different topic. There's some new prescription now for life, especially in America, society, that to be successful you have to go to college. You have to have a college education. Now, is this really valid? And what is obtaining true knowledge and good knowledge? Why do so many people want to go to college, and is it really worth it?
Okay, and
do we have time for this?
Yeah, this will be our final question. We'll take it to a few more minutes here, and then we'll be going out. Do people have to go to college? I think, like for example, I'm looking for a web designer right now. I'm in the process. And people sent me these fantastic resumes. And I'm like, I don't even look at what's on the resume. I just say to them, show me a work sample. I wouldn't care if anything about that. I can't relate to their resume. I need to see what they do artistically as a web designer. So there's an example right there where you wouldn't need all the fancy stuff that they have. And it depends. There's so much in a computer age that you can do on your own getting educated. Now, if there are some things you want to be in life that require those degrees, that require those licenses, you're going to have to go through it. But in a computer age, there's so much you can do. I suppose in many instances there are jobs when people look for candidates, they want that resume there. So if you're thinking in those terms. But on the other hand, if you want to be an artist or something like that, on the other hand, it's probably getting more and more possible at the same time to survive and thrive just by being, whatever you're really naturally inclined to be, and just, following your instincts and developing just naturally without even trying, but being energetic and curious and just learning about stuff on your own. I think there's good opportunities for that. So.
Okay.
So anyway, that's our interview for this evening, and thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. It's great.
Thank you. And we shall see you again on Toward a Quality of Life. Tune in soon, and good evening.